and welcome to the Empowering Law Firm Leaders podcast, where we'll be talking to experts across the legal sector to discover the mindsets, behaviours, skills and digital tools that are needed to run a successful modern law firm. I'm Amy Bruce, host and marketing director at Osprey Approach. Today, I'm joined by practicing corporate lawyer and CEO of Adviserly, the global referral network of boutique law firms that enable small practices to thrive with inbound and outbound referrals. And now author of Working with Strangers, Robert Flint. Welcome, Robert, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So today we'll be discussing how law firms can grow their business through referrals. We'll cover topics discussed through Robert's new book, Working with Strangers, including how to effectively qualify a referral, what a complex referral is, understanding your referral personality type, and how to avoid the bad habits to ensure success. So I have the book with me here. I have scribbled notes all over it. I do apologise. So we've got plenty to get through today. But Rob, on the Adviserly website, you shared that you'd worked in big London law firms and that you've been a consultant to many boutique smaller law firms. You say they both have their own unique challenges, but you stated that running a small business is tough. So why did you feel it was important to set up Adviserly in the first place and then also write your book, Working with Strangers?
Yes, so I was working at a firm called Carbon Law Partners as a corporate lawyer, and the problem that I had was the lack of external referral partners to do other practice areas that I didn't do. And in different countries in particular, that was very difficult. So if you're looking for a good commercial lawyer in Portugal or what have you on an M&A deal, then that's quite difficult to find. You go to the Legal 500 and try and find a good law firm. It will be a large law firm, and that is a very different fit for a boutique law firm. So a client that is expecting a boutique law firm service and getting partner level service, when referred to a large firm, will then usually end up being batted down to someone lower down the chain quite quickly, won't get the same personal touch usually, and the fees probably are different. I mean, boutique law firm fees are not necessarily lower, but they are much more sort of directly relevant to what the client is expecting. That is much more linked to value, I would say, than the large law firms. The large law firms are more structured at dealing with much larger clients, and that sort of model makes more sense. But for boutique firms, they don't. So as a boutique lawyer, you're looking for other boutique law firms, and those boutique law firms are quite hard to find. So an external outbound referral network was the sort of priority, but also it's quite stressful trying to build your own practice. And it's a unique thing to be a lawyer who is programmed to worry about risk, and an entrepreneur who is programmed to move fast and break things, to borrow Mark Zuckerberg's phrase. And those two things do not fit easily together. And you can't talk to lawyers in big firms and expect them to understand. You can't talk to entrepreneurs that aren't lawyers and expect them to understand either. So having a community of like-minded people was the second reason for setting up Adviserly. And then obviously, and the reason that people joined in the first place is inbound referrals is the third sort of limb of the value proposition. So I was sort of less worried about that at the time, but it's obviously very useful as a lead generation. Not that lawyers ever talk about lead generation as such, but that's a good starting point for when you're talking to potential members to say that they will get clients from other firms.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a unique position that they're in to be tackling, like you said, the lawyer mind of risk averse and expertise, as well as that entrepreneurial take risk experiment. So yeah, a really cool network for boutique firms to thrive. Sort of diving deeper into some of we'll go through a couple of the chapters. We can't go through everything, we don't have time, but starting with the lessons that you've learned through collaboration in the modern world. Can you share what those are and why they're so important?
So, and this talks about the sort of structural problems with collaboration, and why, on the one hand, collaboration is so important and referrals are an important part of collaboration, but that actually it's really difficult. So there's a quote from an archaeologist called Margaret Mead, that she said that the first evidence of civilization is a healed human femur, I think. It's a femur, so it's the thigh bone. And the reason for that is that someone has nursed someone else back to health, having broken their thigh bone. Whereas if any other animal with a broken thigh bone would die, and they wouldn't be able to survive. So humanity is different from most other species in the fact that it collaborates. So we are instinctively driven to collaborate. That's why, in many ways, we're a successful species. But on the other hand, we're also terrible at it. So the example in this chapter you're talking about is actually referrals within a hospital, and it relates to someone that I know well, a young girl who went into hospital with all the symptoms of appendicitis and was repeatedly, that diagnosis was repeatedly refused. Essentially, her mother was a GP and was saying, well, I think it's appendicitis, and the surgeons in particular were like, no, it can't be appendicitis. She's too young for appendicitis. And she very nearly died because of the fact that she was being referred to different people within the hospital, getting examined each time. And the system just did not work and had to be sort of forced to work by someone who knew the system quite well. She was an insider as a doctor herself, and also had the expertise. And despite all of that, the girl very nearly died. So even within a massive system that is designed to have patients referred from one department to another, and everyone in that system is very intelligent and has qualifications, and generally among the population, doctors and nurses are probably among the most trusted people compared to lawyers, for example. So you'd think that if any system is going to work in terms of collaboration and referrals, it's going to be that, and it did. Why is it that we struggle, and why is it that big complex systems struggle in particular to make good referrals? So the lessons that drawing from that example are to challenge your assumptions. So don't assume that the person that you're going to be working with knows what they're doing. So even if they are intelligent and even if they are good at their job, actually you need to go a little bit further in terms of just making sure they know what's happening. And if you're not happy, you do need to keep pushing. And so it's not just can't be passive within this collaboration ecosystem. You do actually have to be a bit more pushy than perhaps you want to be. And then secondly, despite that, or sort of partnering with that, have to be humble yourself and know that you might not make the right decision, and listen to other people's point of view. So in this case, obviously the surgeons should have listened more to the medical doctors, to the GPs, and rather than just sitting on their laurels as surgeons and thinking that they were masters of the universe, and learn from your mistakes. And that way the system gradually gets better, the collaboration gradually gets better. And the third point is that it is difficult. So treat collaboration and referrals like a skill that you have to learn. So we have this innate desire and starting point to collaborate, but actually that's not enough. You just sort of almost sit down and learn it. You need to sit down and discuss it with your colleagues, and how can I do this better? And obviously you need to sit down and read Working with Strangers as a good starting point. But the point being, the sort of the big conclusion from that chapter is that you should trust each other to collaborate, but also verify that the person knows what they're doing. And it's a Ronald Reagan quote. Not that perhaps we should be quoting American presidents these days, but yes, trust but verify, taking from a Russian proverb, in fact. So that's the starting point for how to approach collaboration and referrals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think perhaps it's something that we take for granted and that we assume just works, but you've very clearly highlighted, and the book does throughout, that it doesn't. Like, it takes a strategy, it takes planning, it takes skills, it takes effort, and I think those three lessons are something worth remembering. So just to have an overview: lesson 1, challenge assumptions, challenge those that you're working with. Lesson 2, be humble and admit what you don't know potentially, and then work on it, level up your skills on working with strangers and referrals. So following on from that, in chapter 2 of your book, you discuss fire and forget referrals, probably the most typical type of referrals that people think about. And you talk about the importance of referral qualification and how that links to reputation. Can you talk us through, I read it as BTOP method, but maybe it's BTOP, I don't know, method, and how that helps determine if something's a hot referral, something you should jump on, or something a potential future referral?
Yes, it is BTOP. Yeah, it's as in be the top referrer is sort of the idea. So yes, you have to sort of shoehorn in some of the words in order to make that work. But I guess just to rewind slightly, the definition of a referral, a fire and forget referral in particular, is the recommendation plus introduction. So it's not just an introduction. You're just saying, oh, I met this person at the party for 2 seconds, and oh yeah, here's someone else to meet. That's very different from saying this person is the right person to help you with your task that you need help with. And that is why referrals, as defined like that, are so powerful as a way for clients to receive the advisor that they need, and indeed as a service provider, because you're being referred to a client who needs you as match made by somebody else. So a matchmaker who knows both of you is much more powerful than, say, an algorithm that sort of half knows both of you at the moment, at least. Anyway, maybe that will improve. But I think people like the fact that someone can say, I have experienced the use of this service provider. I think they're really good, and I can recommend them specifically for your problem, for your issue. So it's a very powerful thing if you have that kind of client from a referral. Those clients then usually are more loyal. They will stick with you for a long period of time. They will pay you more money over a period of time. And they know your value. You don't have to be convincing them of your value. And also in terms of cost of acquisition, it's sort of some ways lower because you're not spending money to acquire them, but in some ways it takes a lot longer because you have to build these relationships. So, but the power of the referral is in the type of client that you get. So if you're in the ecosystem of making referrals, you want to make outbound referrals and receive inbound referrals. You want to make your outbound referrals as accurate as possible. So there's an extended metaphor in the book about you firing forget, you're launching a missile that finds its target. To help that missile reach its target, you need to qualify the referral so that you're not sending random people to the wrong service providers. You're not saying, oh, this is someone who might need a lawyer in a year's time. You're saying this person needs a lawyer now, and they've got the money to pay for it, and everything's ready for this to work. So it's very similar to the sort of more famous sales qualification, the BANT framework, which is budget, authority, need, and timeline. BTOP is budget, team, other parties, and planning. So the key difference really is that you're not, if you're making a outbound referral, you don't have the time or the financial incentive to go into huge amounts of detail on what that client needs, because you're not the one who's going to be doing the work ultimately. You don't need to do all of the quoting detail and everything like that before you send it on to the person who's going to be doing the work. You want to make sure that you're not annoying the service provider you're sending the work to. So it's very simple conversation to have. Client comes to you or someone comes to you and says, oh, do you know anyone who can help with this? And so you say, well, okay, a good quality planning lawyer is worth their weight in gold, but they're worth paying for. Does it make sense to refer you to them at this stage of your plans? To just sort of flush out whether they have the budget and are aware that it's going to cost them money, or whether they just want to have a free conversation and not do anything further. You don't really want to refer those people to your trusted network because they're incredibly annoying people to be referred to. To have referred to you, because you are then wasting your time having a free conversation with someone who's never going to convert into a client. It's also worth asking then, so in terms of the team, does anyone else need to sign off on this? Or indeed, are there any other referrals that I can make to you before this referral? Is there anyone else that you need? And you can then establish, do they have their team in place? Do they have the authority they need to make decisions? Or are you going to be introducing them to someone and then actually it turns out they need to talk to a planning consultant first, say, before they talk to their planning lawyer or whatever the thing is that they need to actually do first. And then other parties, the O. So it's sort of the third parties, the external factors. So this might be the planning department. So a government authority that needs to be squared first, or is there another party to the transaction that is involved, and or an investor or a buyer or seller, whatever? What needs to happen first before you can make before they need the service provider that you're going to refer them to? And then sort of more broadly, what the P is for planning. So what stage are you at with this? Like, how ready are you yourself with your plans to move forward? And if you're not ready, then maybe hold off on the referral. So you can say actually the key thing with most of these points is when you're having the conversation with your client or whoever it is, to say, you can use the phrase, it seems that you're not that far through with your planning, or it seems that there are other people who need to sign off on this, or it seems that the planning department is being difficult, or it seems that this might take a long time. And that phrase is just incredibly useful because someone can just contradict you really easily, but it's not sort of conflict conversation, because you can be wrong without being wrong. And then if you're right, they'll say, that's right, that you're correct. Then you've established the point really quickly. And the point is to keep the conversation as short as possible, because this is not your main gig, but to get enough information so you're not sending off rubbish referrals to your referral plans.
Yeah, absolutely. I think not only is that going to affect your reputation with your referral partners, but also with your potential client. If it's somebody that you've really built up that relationship with, not only are they going to appreciate the honesty up front and the extra questions and assumptions. I like that tactic of it seems like. I think that's a good way to make a judgment and an assumption without getting into conflict. But yeah, I mean, you've built that network with them, so you want to refer them to somebody that's going to extend that network and build upon that trust that you've created. So yeah, that makes total sense to have that qualification up front. As well as fire and forget referrals, you then also talk about complex referrals, which is recommendation plus introduction plus teamwork. So this is where the client starts their journey with one expert who then works together with another expert to get the project going, which I guess can happen quite regularly within a law firm and across departments.
Yep.
Can you share what needs to be considered to ensure a successful complex referral? Because there's a lot of moving parts involved here, and it probably takes slightly more than just a quick qualification.
Yes. And so I think the first thing to do is to acknowledge that a complex referral is different from a fire and forget referral, and the fact that it does need to be dealt with differently. And I think this is a big mistake that a lot of lawyers make. So particularly if you're in a big firm, you'll have one department has a client and they consider themselves to be the client relationship manager because it's their client. They refer to another department. And then other than meeting up for coffee or whatever and the occasional phone call, kind of then drop client into new department and see what happens. And then there is no acknowledgement that's a complex referral, because actually the new person you refer them to is probably going to have to work with other departments across the law firm, and probably with you as well, in terms of getting the piece of work done. And that can lead to then a complete mess, because no one has ownership of the project management. Communication issues arise, conflict. You don't know who the team is on the matter. The client doesn't know who they should be talking to. So in order to avoid those issues, acknowledge it's a complex referral, and then the three aspects of a good complex referral are effective project management, good communication, and having a good team in place to work on that referral. So in a in the first situation, I guess, take it through the story of a referral. So typically, maybe say as a corporate lawyer, you get a referral from property team, someone setting up a business, or they've structured a conveyancer on their house, but actually they run a business, and can corporate lawyer help with the business aspect? And then there are employees as well, so you talk to the employment department. There's always tax issues. Maybe if there's a divorce or something, there's a family issue as well. So who should be managing the process? Who does it make sense to be the project manager in potentially this complex situation where you have different service providers with different levels of expertise on different subject matters? Who is the project manager? And if you find that it's the wrong person, and it almost always will be the wrong person because it's never allocated properly. Firms don't allocate the project management properly of these transactions, and the people, particularly in sort of partner firms, there's this sort of jealousy of protecting clients and making sure that the personal relationship is only with one partner rather than with several. So you end up with the wrong person completely managing the project. Project is then not managed, fees are not managed, time frame is not managed, and finance up right now. So get that project manager in place. If you feel it's the wrong person, basically volunteer to be the project manager, and acknowledge that project management has a cost in its own right. It's not just I'm corporate lawyer and I'm doing corporate law work, I'm also project managing. And I think for law firms, having actual project managers in law firms is incredibly useful. Some law firms do this, and I think that's really valuable. But often it will be a corporate lawyer that does it. So we'll have to manage transactions in a short space of time to get something over the line, so that we're always aware of having lots of little loose ends to tie up before transaction can actually happen. That project management in place. Communication is the second point, and this is true for any kind of collaboration, but just particularly for complex matters, and particularly when you're dealing with different personalities, different cultures, different, you'd have an accountant, a lawyer, an engineer, lots of different people on the transaction. How do you manage who's doing what? What are the dependencies? That communication needs to be open, and it needs to be confident, and it's really hard. Communication is a really difficult skill in its own right. And also shout out to Erin Meyer's book, The Culture Map, which is a great book. Strongly recommend that to anyone who has to work with teams across cultures, or indeed have spouses or partners from different cultures as well. It's very enlightening in that book. And then so the third point is having decent team members, and sometimes you have to work with people that you think are not very good, and this could be really difficult. And so this is also where it's actually kind of harder in a larger firm, because you have to work with the people in the relevant department at the relevant firm. You can't refer it out to a firm that you like better, which you can do in a boutique firm, can't in a large firm. So, and particularly if the person who is the problem, the person who is not so competent as the client relationship manager, the partner who is referred in the work, if they are the person who's just not that great, what do you do? How do you manage that relationship? How do you try and make sure that the people who are best placed to do the job are doing the jobs that they should be doing, and to manage that process? So you can sort of see here immediately that actually a complex referral, it is complex. The aim is always to simplify, but actually got a whole load of things going on here, both sort of mechanical in terms of the project, but also relationships and personalities that clash and whatnot. So work on those three things. Hopefully your complex referral will come out good in the end. And it is also, I mean, the broader point is that if you get these working, this is the key to collaboration. This is the pinnacle of collaboration, because then you can have lots of different teams working together. You don't need to have massive organizations in order to work on a project. If everyone can do complex referrals, you can have people working in smaller groups, collaborating, rather than that infrastructure already in place. So yeah, that's the big picture.
Absolutely. I guess the key takeaway feels like everybody needs accountability in this, and everyone needs to be aware of their responsibilities. I guess if everybody read the book, everybody would know that they're that key in that complex referral and what part they play. And I love the idea of project managers within law firms, because it is just a very large project, and that is a skill in its own right, to be able to stay organized and stay on top and manage all the moving parts and ensure people are accountable. I come from a sort of software development background, and that's just standard within software development, managing multiple teams with one product or project manager. And you're right, I think in these that's maybe overlooked. So perhaps as a starting point, if your firms don't have them, nominating yourself if that's where you feel your skills lie, or nominating somebody else because you know that that's where their skills lie. Everyone loves a bit of an ego boost. If if you
Yeah.
say someone's really good at something, you never know what might happen. But yeah, I think that's a great idea for setting up successful complex referrals and managing all those moving parts. Within the book, you discuss several bad habits as to why a lot of these things fail and referrals aren't a success, essentially. These bad habits span 3 categories, so across quality, value, and the communication bit you mentioned. Can you choose, maybe a difficult question, but 3 bad habits that are maybe the easiest to fix, or maybe the most common that could be a quick fix?
Yes, I mean the most common, the easiest to fix is being ungrateful when you receive a referral. So the person who receives the referral, it's remarkably common for people not even to say thank you for receiving a referral. And so part of the reason for writing the book was having sat up advisory, seeing law firms who are good at making referrals and would send gifts to each other to say thank you, like small gifts, very everything above board, like a box of chocolates or something. And those that would just go silent after the referral had been received. You'd think nothing had happened, and then actually it turns out they've been working with this client for ages now, and they're really happy. And actually saying thank you, saying that's gone well, is the easiest thing to do. So easy to do, and people don't do it. So that's number one, the lowest of low-hanging fruit. Say thank you.
You've made me feel a bit nervous now that perhaps I need to go back to my recent referrals. If it's the most common, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, because I guess it is really easily overlooked, isn't it, that you don't say thank you? I guess maybe you've assumed that you have, or you're just going about your day and you forget. I'm making a note now, and I'm going to look back through my emails.
This is where, so the later chapter talks about technology. So this is where tech can be really useful in making these sort of things not quite automatic, but setting reminders and that kind of thing, so you don't forget, and really enable the person. It seems odd, but you can use technology really to enable the personal connection. So don't use tech to replace the personal connection, facilitate. And I suppose another tech point in terms of really simple things that people get wrong. So when someone is referred to you, the first thing that they have is the contact information. It's an email, you have a conversation, what have you. And then they will probably check who you are online to make sure that you're not an axe murderer or something. And so they'll look at your LinkedIn or whatever social media is appropriate for your business and your website. So if your website and your social media is terrible, then again, depending on your area, that's you're letting yourself down, because it's the first verification step that will be taken. And the lowest of low-hanging fruit of all of that, because that, building a website is potentially quite a big thing to do, but the easiest thing you can do is set up a LinkedIn profile or social media profile and have a good photograph. It's so simple, but number of LinkedIn photographs that are terrible. So you look at someone and the lighting's bad, they look like they don't care. It looks very unprofessional, particularly for lawyers. Like if you have a bad LinkedIn profile photo, people are going to think that you're going to give the same level of attention to your legal work that you give to your photograph. And that is not the impression you want to be giving. So another very easy thing to fix, get a good photograph on your profile across your media.
Yeah, I think it is the little things, isn't it, typically that are forgotten about or overlooked that actually have the biggest impact. You're right. The first thing I do whenever I meet anybody new is look on their LinkedIn or on their website. I think everybody does the same. So yeah, I think there's probably a hell of a lot of low-hanging fruit that are super easy to implement. You mentioned in the book that unlike any other business growth strategy, referrals are personal, and that's why it's so important to understand ourselves before we can define whatever that referral strategy should be. You outline several personality types in the book that link to referral types. Can you talk us through what they are, what that means, and potentially do you see any common ones within the legal sector?
Yes. So, I mean, the first thing to say about personality types is obviously that they are not cut and dried. People will, they're sort of useful ways of thinking about things. They're sort of prisms through which to look at people rather than being definitive. And I completely reject any attempt to put people in the sort of the red, green, blue. Yeah, I think it's complete nonsense. So, but they can be useful prisms to say that look at different styles of negotiating is useful, look at what motivates people is useful, and then that will help sort of determine how you respond to them and also how you think about yourself and what things mean to you and where you fit in the collaboration ecosystem. So, and the first sort of prism that we look through is motivations and and you see, well, the three that I sort of outline are the default career professionals. So people who become lawyers because their family think they should become lawyers or because they want to prolong their education because they don't know what they want to do when they leave university. So they do a law conversion or whatever. The mission led, so people who are idealists, they have a big goal that isn't just about making money. They have something they really want to achieve. And the obsessives are the people who are really obsessed with the detail and really want to just do a really great job and understand exactly how things work. And obviously, people can be all of those things. They can move through different stages at different parts of their life. But so what motivates you will change. And it depends indeed what you're doing. So you might be a default career professional in one aspect of your life, but then you might be completely obsessed by something else and being obsessive in another aspect of your life. So, and I just think those are useful things to think about when you're dealing with collaboration and referrals, because then you're thinking, well, actually, am I aligned with this person on their broader, if they have a mission, like, am I aligned with them on their mission? And therefore, are we going to be good strategic partners potentially because we're going in the same direction and we can really help each other out in the long term? Or if you are mission led and the person you are referring work to is someone who just has a job and they're happy to do a good job, but that's all they're doing, then they can also be a great referral partner, but you're not going to try and align on their values and their mission because you don't need to. They just want to do a good job, then go home and have a nice life. And equally, the obsessives, the sort of detail people, they might be really good to have on the team, but you might not want them front and center of the client relationship management, what have you. Like you can think about sort of different ways, like where should these people be? So that's the sort of the motivation side. I think is really important when you're looking at collaboration. And then negotiating style is just the second prism. And there are unlimited number of prisms that you can look through different personality types. So the second one I look at is negotiating style. And this is based on a book by Chris Voss called Never Split the Difference, which is another great book. And I'd recommend everyone read that just in terms of just to improve on negotiating. It's really useful. And he looks at three different types, which it's always three, isn't it? Assertive, accommodators, and analysts. And when you think of somebody who's assertive negotiating style, everyone can kind of immediately picture the sort of take no prisoners approach to negotiation. The accommodator is the sort of everything's going to be fine approach to, and then avoid conflict. And then the analysts are the people who really love the detail again. So maybe you have like an analyst and an obsessive, they maybe align in terms of the motivations versus the negotiating style. And again, with these three, you can move between the different three. You can learn to behave like an assertive if you're not naturally assertive. You can you can learn to be more accommodating if you're perhaps more assertive instinctively. So you fall between these three. And that is also useful when you're collaborating, because if someone is being quite aggressive, you need to know how to deal with that, and that it's not necessarily that they are aggressive or that they're not a nice person. It's just that that's their style of negotiating. And then how you collaborate will change with different people, depending on what you recognize in them. And then also, if you think, actually, I'm perhaps a bit too assertive when I negotiate, I should rein it in a bit, listen more, and be more accommodating, and also be more respectful of people who take things offline and want to look at the detail, because that's actually a really useful element as well. And you don't need to make negotiating decisions often in the room. You can take it offline, and that's the more sort of analyst sort of way of looking at things. So also useful to know that when you're referring work, and what kind of clients might work well with different providers. Because if you have if you're referring a very assertive client to an analyst, I think actually they're not going to get on very well, because the assertive is going to want things done immediately, and the analyst is going to want to take things offline. So just to think about that. And then the third and sort of much bigger point is the different cultures of different people, and how it makes an enormous difference what culture someone is from as to how they behave and how they perceive different behaviors in others. And I mean, to take the example from my relationship, my partner is French, I'm English. Many ways, the two cultures are quite similar, because historically, obviously, they've cross-pollinated a lot. But in terms of, and it's in the book, The Culture Map, the author is American and her partner is also French. And the Americans and the Brits are quite similar in terms of how they give negative feedback, which is the bad news sandwich, sort of got to be polite and not be too aggressive. Whereas the French are very much, they can't stand that. French think that, and this is obviously a very broad generalization, but in general, the approach that French kids are taught is to be direct. So if something is bad, say it's bad, and teachers will tell children that their work is bad. They will say, this is rubbish, do it better, without the whole sort of, oh, you've done very well here, and that was great, but you could improve this. So to say that was bad, improve. And that's the approach that the French learn. And then if someone is not direct with them, they think that person is treating them like an idiot, and therefore being disingenuous and perhaps lying. Whereas for us, that kind of feedback is just rude and potentially very hurtful. So it's kind of like you've got different those different cultures make a massive difference. And once you know to spot them, it makes collaboration much easier, and you're not going to take offense. You're not going to be hurt as much, and you can adjust your approach to the cultures that you're dealing with and how you think that they're going to react to you. So it's a minefield, but it's also fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it allows you to better adapt and to be adaptable with people, which ultimately helps you to network and connect better. If you can adapt and understand who you're talking to and who you're networking with, that helps you build deeper connections. I mean, the amount of experts on this podcast that has come back to the same thing. It's about being really self-aware. It's about understanding what your triggers are, what your behaviors are, what's your typical go-to. Once you've understand yourself, you see that in others. And you're right, as part of the complex referral strategy, you can then very strategically put people together to get the success and the outcomes that you're after. So yeah, I can totally understand why that is so key as part of this. Thank you for the book recommendations. We love book recommendations on here, so we'll make sure we link to those in the show notes. And I'm going to bring in another one that we've spoken about many times before, Black Box Thinking, a book by Matthew Syed. We've mentioned it several times, and you mention it within the book in terms of talking about failure and experimentation, something that typically in the legal sector they shy away from. They're taught to shy away from. That's not what they're built to do.
Yeah.
So within working with strangers and referrals, why is experimentation so key? Why do we need to be failing and experimenting here?
Yes, and I suppose the when we're talking about failure, the important thing is because it's such a big word and it's such a scary word, but actually it shouldn't be. And if you think about it, rather than it's personal and deep and you're a failure if you fail, it's more that actually it's a way of getting information and it's a point on a graph. So if something doesn't work, you're like, right, okay, add that into the algorithm of my figuring out what the strategy should be, and it gives me more information to go forward and improve. So with a referral strategy, because it's personal and because it's about you and other people and your relationships with those people, so the aim of the strategy basically is to get a network of people who refer you work and that you will support you in tough times and will be great to refer work to, make your job both profitable and fun and safe, and like it's much more powerful than a SEO strategy or whatever, because it's all of those things as well as a way of generating work. So if you're going to do it right, you're going to need to meet lots of people that end up not being the right fit for you, and need to go to events that aren't the right events for you. And you're going to feel like when you do that you're failing. You're going to go to an event and it's a really miserable experience, and everyone will have done this at some point. But you go to an event and people ask you questions and you think, actually, I'm not very useful to these people. Like, no one's really biting, no one's thinking that what I'm doing is good, and I don't really know why I'm here, and I've spent money coming to this event, and I'm just tired, and I've had lots of coffee, and I'm going to drink because just to make myself feel better at with the drinking stage at the end of the day. But you're not doing anything useful, and you maybe have some conversations, but nothing goes anywhere. And then you feel like that failure really stings. Whereas actually, you can use that to tell you that you're going to the wrong events and think, okay, why am I going to the wrong events? What would be better events for me? Then the way you do that is looking at the information that you have to hand to start off with. So as a service provider, you're never going to have, it's not like you're Meta or Google or whatever. You don't have like huge reams of data. You're one person, you can only take on so many clients. You can only take on so many referrals. But within that information set for you personally, you have information that says, actually, well, the clients I really like working for have certain characteristics. The referral partners that I work with have certain characteristics. So if you're a lawyer, maybe it's accountants that refer you work, or have you. There's like, you maybe identify different groups of people that refer you work. And then maybe among that, there's like a star. There's someone who really refers you lots of work. So why does that person in particular like get on with me? And why does this other person, when they refer me work, it always goes horribly wrong? Like, what is happening that's different? And if you start to look at what's going right and what's going wrong and the failure, and look at the data, how much value am I getting from each of these referred clients? How long are they lasting? Then you can really improve your referral strategy quite quickly. So rather than, I think this is the big point in terms of having a strategy rather than just doing it ad hoc. Because in Advisely, we try to sell them sort of like marketing assistance through third parties. One of the early sort of approaches to try to monetize Advisely was to say, well, we will have, we've got these consultants on hand who will be able to provide SEO advice or build your website. And you'd offer this to the lawyers and they'd say, well, actually, no, we don't need that really, because most of our work comes through referrals. And then you'd say, well, what do you do to generate referrals? And they would say, oh, nothing. It's all about reputation. And then you're like, okay, this feels like you're missing a trick here, because it's definitely a lot you can be doing. And these would be the people that wouldn't be thanking each other for sending referrals. So you're like, okay, you're doing quite a lot wrong. So can we then maybe make a strategy out of building referrals, which is where it came about.
Taking that personal element out of it and looking at the failure as data and information to analyze, I think is the best way forward, to take yourself out of it and to not connect yourself with that failure. You're right, that feels like a horrible word. It needs a rebrand. Somebody out there needs to rebrand the word failure, I think, because you're right, it just gives you trend data. It helps you spot things that are working really well. It helps you spot things to avoid, and all that data is just great for us to work upon. And you're right, it then feeds into the other things you've got going on. So is there things we can do in the marketing department, or are there things in the events and the networking we go to that all sort of collates and builds up? I love that idea. Throughout the book, it's peppered with case studies, which were really great to bring a lot of these ideas to life and show how much they worked. And we've touched on this already, but I just love this idea of, there was a common theme of generosity. I actually recently interviewed Matt Dixon, and a lot of his activator approach, he calls it, to business development was also about generosity and paying it forward. And there definitely seems to be part of this as the core of a referral strategy. I just want to touch on 2 case studies and some quotes that were mentioned in there. So case study 2 was with Seven Legal, and he mentions to get referrals, you have to give referrals. So that's a pretty good start. And then case study 5 from Creative High shares the importance of taking your clients out for dinner. And like you said, just saying thank you, something that's so overlooked. So can we touch on slightly why generosity is so important as part of this, and why it's worth taking that time to be really generous with your referral network?
Yes, well, I mean, it encourages the, well, okay, so first of all, I guess separate this out from the pecuniary monetary approach. Like, to start off with, generosity is good in its own right. It is good for you. It's good for people around you. It's not about making money, actually. Fundamentally, it's you take the time to get to know people. You're generous with your time. You're generous with your referrals. It's good intrinsically to be like
It's a good
that.
life strategy, I think.
Yeah, you'll be much happier. Yeah, it just in general, it's a good thing to be. And then in terms of you linking it to a referral strategy, then there's a sort of idea of a reciprocity debt. So if someone gives you something, it's like at Christmas or your birthday, if someone gives you a present and you haven't got them something, you're like, damn, I need to get them something in return. So there's this sort of expectation. You set an expectation of reciprocity. You also set the behaviors within the relationship by saying, well, I give you stuff freely without expecting anything in return, and therefore you should do stuff freely without expecting anything in return as well. And it's kind of this sort of tension there, and obviously you're not expecting anything in return in order to get something in return. So, but that's how human nature works. So altruism is, there's always that philosophical tension, isn't there? Is it possible to be altruistic, or are you expecting something good to happen to you for being altruistic? If you give money to charity, are you wanting to go to heaven or something? So I don't think you can really ever separate them out. So make referrals to other people, and you're more likely to get referrals from those people. And make it clear when you make those referrals, not just you're sending them, you then follow up, how did it go? Making it clear that you're managing your client's journey. You promote you're being the change you want to see in the collaboration world, misquote Gandhi. And that then establishes your network improves. You're a good part of your network. You're improving that network. And that's Bill Hogan's sort of methodology, if you like. And that's he is everything sort of, he's very energetic. So this works for him. He's very much kind of gregarious figure. Would it work if you were a sort of quieter, shyer type person? It's a different approach perhaps that you need, but just to be very generous with your referrals, you can do that by email. You don't need to be sort of like the life and soul of the party. And then the dinner idea, so which is like, this is probably the tip that I share the most from the book as something that everyone can do immediately. So this is Thad Cox from Creative Heist, is that if you have a client that you really like and you want more clients like them, who they've given you work, and take them out for dinner. That's the normal relationship building thing to do for any service provider, or it should be. But rather than just do that, why not also say, well, you can also invite other potential clients so in your sector who aren't competing with you, feel free to invite them as well. You reward people that you think should be rewarded. Like I will pay for them to have dinner. We'll have a nice dinner together in a fancy restaurant, 5 people, so everyone can around a round table, so everyone can actually talk to each other. So you're getting access to a group of people who are potential clients. Maybe nothing comes of it immediately, but you are then the person who's paying for dinner for these 5 people who are your ideal clients. And then maybe those people, they leave and go into different clients, and the alumni of existing clients are a very powerful group of people for a referral strategy. But you've got these people who are around the table, you've paid for dinner without any expectation of getting any work from them, but they then know who you are. You can tell them what you do, you can connect with them on LinkedIn. As long as you're active and you're giving out information as to what you do, your expertise is at the dinner, and also to follow up. You're then front of their mind when they maybe need someone who does what you do. Your client obviously loves it because they've got to not only had a nice dinner with you, who they presumably also like, but they've also got to reward their people they want to give a good impression to. So they feel great about you. They're more likely then to refer you work otherwise as well and make other referrals because they know you're looking for referrals. And your clients are often your best referral partners. So this dinner is it's an incredibly natural way of doing business because you're not going out sharking. You've got someone else to bring you potential clients. You're having a nice time and no one is asking for work. It's not actually that expensive. Like if one of these clients, service providers, our fees tend to be higher than like the fee for a price of a product. So it's worth putting in this investment in time and money to get these steady clients to then provide you with fees over the course of several years. And then that's you've got a great kernel of a referral network. People will be your perfect client, impressed your client, you've set the expectations, what the behavior is, and you've enjoyed it. And that's all crucial. Like it means you'll do it more. Mm-hmm. You'll do it again, rather than if it's something you hate doing, then you're not going to do it. So
yeah, and it's so intrinsically linked to reputation, and we know from examples that lawyers rely on their reputation of the network and the clients that they do have, and we know they rely on word of mouth, and we know they rely on referrals, but actually it's such an easy tactic to level up and just go that one step beyond of things that they're already relying on and doing. And again, it goes back to these fundamentals that are typically overlooked, and you're right, we should be enjoying these things, and it's a great chance to make that connection, going back to that human element that we sort of started the conversation on. It's a great natural way to connect and collaborate, and paying it forward before having to talk about business or expecting something in return. What a great start to a relationship. More people should do this. I think it's overlooked generally in the sort of marketing business development world as a tactic. I think it's very overlooked. Yep. Finally, we've mentioned tech very briefly, but I just want to talk about scaling this. So we talked about, let's not do this ad hoc, let's have a real strategy in place. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and there's a lot of connections and a lot of things to remember. How can firms use tech to scale that referral strategy and make that impactful?
Yeah, so I think there are perhaps 2 categories. There's small things you could probably do straight away that just makes things slightly easier. And then there's the slightly broader, like setting up a system to make it work better and get the data that you need. And I'd probably just in terms of the low-hanging fruit, the way you can, because the whole thing about referral strategy is you're broadly just improving what you're already doing. This is not reinventing the wheel. This is going with the grain of what you kind of doing already. So, for example, when you go to events and you go to the right events, you found the right people, and then how do you connect with people at the event? Do you take their business card? Not really anymore. Some people will do, and then they will also connect on LinkedIn, or they will exchange emails or what have you. And then you have to, maybe you've got 10 business cards at the end of that event or 10 LinkedIn connections. And what do you do then? The next day, what you want to do, what you think you'll do when you get that contact, is to follow up with them the next day. But because you've had a day off, not doing your sort of day job as a service provider, and you've got your existing clients then saying, my deadlines are arriving, this is work for you to do, hurry up. And you often don't do that follow-up. and they're in the same position, so neither do they. So these are your potential referral partners, and there's no follow-up done. So at those events, if you're connecting with them on LinkedIn, which is easy to do with the app, you have the QR code, you can scan each other's app, incredibly simple. You then get the connection. You can send them a message immediately on LinkedIn and have them be there when you send them the message that says, hello, we talked about this, this, and this. So then you remember, you've got a picture on the LinkedIn profile, you've got contact in your contacts and your messages in LinkedIn, and you've got roughly what we talked about. So you're then like, okay, well, having talked to 10 people, I can now remember what we talked about. You can have, if you have a CRM set up, and if you're a smaller business, this can be easier because then it's your CRM rather than plugging into the big CRM for your wider organization. But if you're plugged into a CRM, you can have an integration between LinkedIn and your CRM, so that the details are added to your CRM, and then CRM has an automation which flings out an email to the person you've connected with. And it can be a fairly generic email, but it can say it was nice to meet you at the event, and if you want to catch up, great to have a Zoom call or what have you, please then insert Calendly link or equivalent so that they can book a call. And then you can also set it up so that a reminder email goes out a week later or something. So rather than having to send that email yourself, all you're doing is hooking up your LinkedIn to your CRM so that get to that admin heavy stage, get that first conversation potentially going, and then you can establish whether you are actually useful to each other. So maybe you meet 10 people at an event. Each of those 10 people gets this email. Maybe 4 people book a call with you, rather than having no one book a call with you at all from an event, which is often what happens. So you just got much simpler. So, and hopefully other people are doing it with you as well, so you can respond to what they've done. And the point there is that tech is not replacing human connection, it's just facilitating. It's replacing the admin, facilitating. So that's sort of like use tech in that way to just amplify what you're already doing. And then the bigger sort of broader strategic point is to start to think about all of your referral partners as referrer personas in your CRM, and have a CRM. Often lawyers in boutique firms won't have a CRM, or they'll have a not particularly good CRM, or they won't know how to use it. And it's quite difficult to set up, so get someone to do that for you. Get the automation set up, so you're sending out emails that are in your voice, sound like you, and they respond to usual situations that you're in. So you then have emails that go out to your clients to say, periodically, your existing clients to say, great to catch up and have a catch-up call. So you're not having to do that. You're not having to think, oh, I haven't spoken to them for a while. CRM will fling one of these emails out to your clients, say, oh, it'd be great to catch up. And then you have a call with them, and in that call, you then say, you can ask, do they have any referrals? Or do they have any people who would benefit from your services? So you don't want to say, do you have any referrals? Because obviously no one's going to. You feel very uncomfortable asking a question like that. But you can say, do you know anyone else who benefit from our services? Because you clearly like us. We have space for one more client. If you know anyone, that'd be great, particularly someone like you. No one's offended by that question. You've done it in a personal way. You've asked it face to face or online, but you've spoken it. It's not by email, but you haven't had to set up the call in order to do it. So if you use technology to facilitate those interactions, your existing client's going to be happier, or you're going to get more referrals, you're going to get more work.
We've all been guilty of dedicating our time and resource to go to an event, and then life gets in the way and you forget, and it's 3 weeks later and you think, well, it's probably a bit awkward to reply now. So I'm absolutely taking away that tip of messaging them whilst you're there, because yeah, I'm forever scribbling notes of what was their name? Did I talk about this with her or that with him? Yeah, and it just gets very messy. So I'm taking that tip myself for sure. Thank you so much, Robert, for your expertise and your knowledge today. I think the biggest takeaway I have from this is that there's some really low-hanging fruit and some really quick wins that law firms can level up their referral strategy from things that they're already doing. A lot of this is already in place, but actually it's just taking a little bit of time, dedicating 45 minutes in your calendar to go, I'm just going to sit and think about my referral strategy for a second. And there'll probably be loads of stuff that come up that will be like, I can't believe we don't already do this, and that are so easy to implement. So yeah, it's really just leveling up and taking it to the next level of things that law firms are already utilizing. It's just, yeah, some low-hanging fruit to take it that one step further.
Yes, and I think it's a bit of a mindset shift, because people think of marketing, they think of business development, but they don't think of referral strategy in its own right. Whereas that's where your best clients come from. So that should be front and center. Put that first, and then things fall into place more naturally. And you're not working against the grain as a lawyer. You're working to your reputation. You're working to your personal contacts in your network. You're not feeling like you're being artificial or fake. This is built around you. You're getting the best clients that are built around you and make you want to come into work during the day. So it's a better business, better life, I would say.
Couldn't agree more. What a great way to end it. Thank you, Rob, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.